Welcome to the Stoughton Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum for 2018. I think I'll bend this up a little bit, sorry. And just want to do some thank yous. Once my phone comes back on, I put my glasses on. I'm Terry Schneider, I'm the Executive Director of the Stoughton Chamber of Commerce. And want to thank Stop and Shop for providing some of the refreshments in the attendance room. Thank Michael Hammond, who is going to be our moderator for this evening. The committee for the Candidates Forum was Cindy Pizarro, who was chair, Jeff Pickett, co-chair, and Erin Lockhart was a committee member as well as myself. And I'd like to thank Christine Iacobucci, who is going to be our timekeeper for this evening. And Michael, take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, Terry. I would like to thank Terry and Cindy Pizarro for inviting me here tonight. I am the station manager of Stoughton Media Access Corporation, but I am not here tonight representing SMAC. But that does not mean I won't pass up this opportunity to give us a little plug and say that this evening's Candidates Forum is being recorded and broadcast by Stoughton Media Access Corporation and can be viewed on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon 28. This program will also be on video on demand, and that can be accessed on our website at www.stoughtontv.com. And first, I would like to introduce the uncontested candidates. We have Adam Dawkins, who is running unopposed for re-election as moderator. Barry Crimmins, a write-in candidate for the Housing Authority. And FORREST LINDWALL is running unopposed for re-election to the Redevelopment Authority. Will they be speaking? Excellent. Excellent. Adam, would you like to go first?
Good evening, and thank you for having me tonight. I'd like to begin by expressing my gratitude to the Stoughton Chamber of Commerce, to our friend Terry Schneider, Cindy Pizarro, and our friends at SMAC, and all who have worked hard to make this evening's forum possible. When Stoughton's voters elected me town moderator last year, I was very humbled and certainly very grateful, and I immediately began to study the intricacies of my new position. The town moderator has many organizational responsibilities which facilitate the legislative processes of our town. While the town charter spells out many of my responsibilities very clearly, the charter does not spell out long-standing traditions in the way we prepare for our annual town meeting. So I'm learning a great deal about this season and about those traditions and how to best honor those traditions. It's very important to examine our long-standing practices to see which are serving useful purposes and which are not. And that is, of course, an ongoing process. I would, of course, be remiss if I didn't thank my esteemed predecessor and our town moderator emeritus, Howard Hansen, who has coached me and mentored me since the election last year. Howard continues to recover from the effects of a stroke, and he has a long road ahead of him. All of us who know and love Howard knows how much he loves to gab, and he loves to talk, and he loves to be with his friends. And this stroke has made it very difficult for Howard to speak. But we also know that Howard is a fighter, and as I said at our forum last week, he might be short in stature, but he's a giant of a man. And I hope you will join me in remembering Howard in your thoughts and in your prayers in the days and weeks ahead. This year's annual town meeting is shaping up well. Our standing committees are hard at work with the required hearings on all of the 55 or so articles that we will consider this year at town meeting. I'm incredibly encouraged by the amount of interest in our town meeting and by the number of people who have decided to run for town meeting representative. We're working to remove some barriers that have kept people from serving as town meeting representatives in the past. This year, we're offering childcare as a complimentary service to town meeting representatives. We're reshaping the warrant book so that it's laid out a little more intuitively. and we're organizing it so it will be easier to find backup documents to support every article. We're going to continue to find ways to make our town meeting accessible, efficient, and engaging. My first year as an elected official in Stoughton saw some issues that I would never have imagined. But such is the life of any community that is full of engaged and passionate citizens. But I got involved because I have great hope for Stoughton's future. I'm convinced that Stoughton's best days are yet to come. Our proudest moments as a town and as a community are ahead of us, and our brightest achievements are just down the road. Thank you for the opportunity to serve you in this unique and important role, a role that facilitates the democratic process through which Stoughton citizens work for a future that is brighter than any past. I hope I can count on your support again this year, and I humbly ask for your vote. Thank you again, and may God bless Stoughton.
Thank you, Adam. That was Adam Dawkins running unopposed for re-election as moderator, and next up we have Barry Crimmins. Barry is a write-in candidate for the Housing Authority.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, everyone. My name is Barry Crimmins. I'm a candidate for a 5th term on the Stoughton Housing Authority. I've served for the last 20 years as a member of the Housing Authority. I also served a 5-year term on the Redevelopment Authority. I, too, would like to thank SMAC for televising tonight's debate. I'd like to thank the Stoughton Chamber of Commerce for putting on this forum and giving folks an opportunity to hear from the candidates. Stoughton Housing Authority's task is very simple. We are charged with the custody and administration of the public housing units in the town of Stoughton that are funded by both state and federal programs. We house over 362 folks within our project-based units in the town. In addition to the over 360 folks that we house at our project-based units, we have an additional 160 folks who are housed through our Section 8 program. Our task is to provide safe, decent, and affordable housing to those members of our population that are most in need of it. I take a great deal of pride in my years of service on the Stoughton Housing Authority, and I'm looking forward to serving another 5 years on the authority. I hope with your endorsement on April 10th, you will see fit to re-elect me to the Stoughton Housing Authority. I know you're not here to listen to me tonight, so I've kept my comments purposely short, and want to thank you for being here tonight. Thank those at home for watching. Once again, thank SMAC for moderating tonight's program, and the Stoughton Chamber of Commerce for putting on this candidates night. Barry Crimmins, candidate for the Stoughton Housing Authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. At this time, I also have a statement from FORREST LINDWALL, who couldn't be here tonight, but if Molly and Barbara could take their seats at the table while I do that, that would be fantastic. FORREST is spending time in Florida with his grandchildren at the moment, but he did send in this statement. I grew up just a few miles down Route 138 in Taunton and have Associate and Bachelor of Science Engineering degrees from Wentworth Institute and Northeastern University, respectively. I started my professional career in surveying and civil engineering a little over 50 years ago, primarily working for consulting engineering firms in the metropolitan Boston area. My experience includes serving as a project manager, project director on a wide variety of state, municipal, and private real estate development projects throughout Massachusetts and Connecticut, whose aggregate costs well exceeded $300 million. I have lived in cities and towns on the North Shore and Metro West Boston, and settled in Stoughton with my wonderful wife, Janice, some 14 years ago. At this point, our 4 children have blessed us with 8 grandchildren, and yet somehow we retain sufficient energy to volunteer on several town committees and be quite active as parishioners of Immaculate Conception Church. My civic involvement in Stoughton includes serving on the town's Transportation Task Force, which has initiated several worthwhile street and sidewalk improvement projects. Serving as the town's alternate delegate to the Old Colony Planning Council, and have been the president of the Friends of Stoughton since its inception 3 years ago. For those who may not be familiar with Friends of Stoughton, we are a group of more than 130 citizen volunteers who strive to improve the environment in our downtown, such as planting flowers, providing bistro tables and chairs, and generally supporting the town's economic development director with resources that are now reaping financial aid from state agencies for storefront improvements and the like. My involvement with the Stoughton Redevelopment Authority began about 6 years ago when I volunteered to fill a vacancy and subsequently was elected to a 5-year term. I am presently the treasurer of the SRA and believe that my commitment to improving our downtown has been demonstrated consistently these past 5 years. I initiated the SRA's proposal to fund a matching grant to support the cost of installing 3 rapid flushing beacons at downtown crosswalks. A community outreach policy that funded small grants to support the Farmers Market and Friends of Stoughton for the purchase of the hanging flower baskets that decorate several street poles in the center, the management of the SRA's effort to complete the due diligence required by the MBTA for the town's purchase of the train station depot at a cost of approximately $30,000, and initiated the subsequent partnership between the Board of Selectmen and the SRA for the purchase of the train station depot, which was approved with the use of Community Preservation Act funds at the fall 2015 town meeting. I also fully participated in the SRA's preparation of the Stoughton Downtown Redevelopment Plan, which was recently on the agenda of the present Board of Selectmen. The implementation of that plan is the primary reason for my decision to seek re-election. I believe I have the skill set and wealth of experience that is required to bring this plan forward and successfully put us on a course that will revitalize our downtown. That is a statement from FORREST LINDWALL. And he is unopposed, seeking re-election for the Redevelopment Authority. And now, I would like to introduce our candidates for school committee. And we have incumbent Molly Cochran and her challenger, Barbara Marshall. And they are running for a single seat on the school committee. And before we start, I would like to explain the rules. And they are as follows. Each candidate will be given 1 minute for an opening statement, 1 minute for a closing statement, and each question, the candidates will have 90 seconds to respond, and there will be no rebuttals. Christine Iacobucci is our timekeeper. Thank you so much, Christine. And she will be keeping track of how much time you have left for each question. Christine is sitting right here in the front. Okay, so let's get started with the first question. These questions have been submitted by the Chamber of Commerce, and if we have questions that were submitted by the public, I will differentiate and let you know. But the first question...
Wanted the openings first, though?
Oh, yes, thank you. Molly, if you could go first and introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Molly Cochran, and I'm running for school committee for re-election because I'm passionate about everything that affects our students and affects our community. And I believe I have demonstrated that commitment and that passion over the last few years. This is a critical time for Stoughton schools. Not only will we have a new high school opening, which I was a strong advocate for, but we're going to be hiring a new superintendent. We need to work to attract a strong pool of candidates and make sure we pick someone who is an effective leader and who's a good fit for our school district and who represents our values. I believe that I have the knowledge and the qualifications to help with this process. I've served on the school committee with dedication for 3 years, and since June I have served as chair. And in that role, I've tried to make sure that the school committee meetings provide information to parents in the community, promote transparency, clarify misconceptions, and address concerns such as the recent water testing issue. I try to a collaborative and respectful approach, but I also don't hesitate to speak my mind and to make suggestions when new suggestions are warranted. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. And now Barbara.
Hi, I am Barbara Marshall, and I'm asking for your vote for the school committee. I may be a newcomer onto the scene, but I'm not a newcomer onto the skill sets that are needed to work on the school committee. I am used to managing a budget, managing management, accountability, customer concerns. To me, the customers would be you, the taxpayer, and student parents. Also dealing with HR issues, human resource issues. I have worked for over 30 years in companies, for TJ Maxx, Children's Place, and currently the last 18 years with Barnes & Noble, managing over $100 million to $8 million a year. I manage over 300 employees, and also I address my companies with concerns and making changes within those companies. I have these skill sets, and the last but most important is that I hire and interview constantly for the last 30 years. So that is something that I'm ready to step forward in helping in interviewing and hiring a new school superintendent, and also moving our school system into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and now we will start with the questions. I'll start with Molly, but we'll switch back and forth who answers the question first. So, Molly, the first question is, how do you think the current school committee is doing?
I think this current school committee is doing really, really well. I think we have a lot of talented people who are all there for the right reasons. They have children in the system, or they've recently had children in the system. They want to dedicate their time. They want to promote excellence. They want to work collaboratively and respectfully with others on the committee and with the administration and with the union as well. I'm very proud of the work that we've done, both under the prior chair, Katie Pina-Anokian, and under my chairmanship as well since last June. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. And Barbara, same question. How do you think the current school committee is doing?
I think they are more reactive than proactive to the issues within our school system. We have still a lot of issues that we need to be addressed, and I haven't really seen anything come from the school committee that is addressing those issues as far as proactively. We seem to be constantly reacting to what's going on into the school system and not really working to ensure that the goals that the superintendent has set are being followed through.
Thank you. And the next question, we will start with you, Barbara. Recently, Principal Miller sent an email to students regarding the planned walkout on March 14th in response to the school shooting in Florida. In the email, she said that students who choose to participate will not be punished. While March 14th ended up being a snow day and the planned walkout did not take place, there have been talks of rescheduling it. Do you agree with the decision to disregard consequences as outlined in the Code of Conduct regarding leaving school during the school day and allowing schools to have a walkout? Does this set a precedent for other political or social causes?
This is a different time here in the United States now. School violence is something that is really escalated in the school violence right now in the school system, so I don't think we can take this opportunity to make this, we need to take this opportunity to make an exception. Our students need to be involved. They need to make sure they're part of it. I think if it's controlled, it's managed, and they all know what the guidelines are, I think I agree with them allowing to have the walkout.
Excellent. And Molly?
Yes, I agree generally with Principal Miller's email and with the approach. I mean, this literally is a life and death issue for children in our country. We are at a crisis point. And I think we're at a point, too, where there is a student movement growing, and you wouldn't want to discourage that movement because I think it's really promoting their own safety and promoting the safety of everyone in society. The only thing that I, quite frankly, would have done differently is I certainly would have penalized students, but I would also said to the extent you're missing 15 minutes of class or something, and maybe it might be nice to write your thought or your about what can be done to address the issue and make schools safer.
Thank you. And the next question, starting with Molly. Approximately 15 years ago, Stoughton Elementary Schools eliminated a mid-morning recess, but kept a 30-minute lunchtime recess. Do you see a benefit to bringing back a mid-morning recess?
I think that's a good question, and as you can imagine in education and educational theory, there's often pendulums that swing one way versus the other way. I think we can probably understand and see where it came from, that was eliminated, that there was a great focus on testing and the Education Reform Act and MCAS and all that. I certainly would be open to revisiting that, but I would want to do it in an evidence-based system. I would want to hear from parents. I would want to hear from teachers. If the teachers say, you know what, I'm really losing them at a certain point in the day, 20 minutes would be helpful. But I think we need to go to that level and really get the input from them rather than from on high, the school committee sitting back and saying, well, this is what feels right to me.
Thank you.
Yes.
And Barbara?
I agree. I think what happened 15 when it happened, there might be a reason for it, and I'm pretty sure the emphasis was because of testing, giving more time back to the school for testing and getting kids ready to take the tests that need to be taken. So I think, again, it should be, again, talking to the parents, talking to the teachers, and finding out, what is needed and why should we move, if we decide to move back to the recess.
Thank you. And the next question will go to Barbara first. Dr. Rizzi stated in her response to the United Feminists of Stoughton High School's letter to Mary Lou's that the group was not a sanctioned club at Stoughton High School. Given that the principal attended the club's first meeting, that the meeting took place in a classroom at Stoughton High School, and that the meeting was advertised on posters throughout the school, how could this group be considered a non-sanctioned club by the administration?
Well, as a parent, when I read that, I was wondering the same thing too. Because my understanding is that if it is held in the school, teachers are part of it, that it would have to be sanctioned. So I was questioning the same thing myself, is how was it not sanctioned by the school? And if it was not sanctioned by the school, why did we allow it to happen in the school itself? And what policies we have in place to ensure those things don't happen in the school? Because my assumption is that we have those policies already, and why weren't they being followed?
Thank you. Molly?
I was really dying to get a Mary Lou's question, so I'm so excited to get this. I don't know whether all of your facts are 100% correct. My understanding is that there is an investigation as to the club being formed and as to the actions that the club took, and I have not heard yet back about the results of that investigation, so I don't want to misspeak as to what's been going on. Again, I have been told a few facts, but they may not be complete. I know that students were being interviewed and the teachers involved were being interviewed as well. But I was told it was not a sanctioned club.
Okay. And this question goes to you first, Molly. With recent news in Florida, school safety has once again been on everyone's mind. Are Stoughton schools prepared in the case of an active shooter situation, and how could we be more prepared?
Well, I'm sure if there were unlimited money, one could always be more prepared for such a disastrous occurrence. And I know there is a school safety presentation actually going on right now at the high school, and more information will be shared with the public. We had several months ago an executive session. We had a review of this issue and discussed the activities of the crisis team. I know that Dr. Rizzi works very, very closely with the Stoughton Police Department and has a very good relationship there. I think preparation, we will certainly continue to be as prepared as we can, but I would also take this moment to say, I think this is a community obligation to make sure that dangerous individuals and young people whose brains have not completed growing until they're 25 years old do not have access to dangerous guns. So I hope that we as a community are all looking out for that issue. It's not just what happens when somebody walks in, possibly onto the property with a weapon. Let's keep that from happening to begin with.
Thank you. And Barbara?
Well, fortunately, we're in the state of Massachusetts, so it does have really good, strict law, gun control laws. They can, of course, be better. But I feel that it is definitely something the school system has been changing. How quickly it needs to change is really what's been happening in the last 6 months to a year in the United States itself. I think we are used to being in a small location in Stoughton, feel very comfortable, and we probably haven't made the changes as quickly as maybe we should have in the past. No one wants to have children rehearse what to do when there's a school shooting, but unfortunately that's the reality these days.
Thank you. And this question goes to you first, Barbara. The school committee recently decided to forego an annual superintendent review and decided instead to implement an every other year review going forward. In light of recent controversies at Stoughton High School, are you in favor of this, and why?
I am not in favor of the decision, especially knowing that the superintendent is leaving at the end of next year. That basically gives her, I guess, no incentive to really, the school committee to really hold her accountable during that last year she's with us. At least going, if they had done the review this year, they at least would have had some clear plans on exactly where she's going to leave the school system and really know what she's really working on this last few, these last few months and this last year. So I don't think, I think if she was still going to be with us, that would have been fine, but not with her leaving next year.
Thank you.
I'd just like to respond. There is every incentive for Dr. Rizzi to do an outstanding job and for the school committee to follow what her goals are and to make sure that she follows through. The reason we changed from a 1 year to a 2 year review process, which is what most of the teachers, which is what the teachers with professional teacher status have, is that is what followed in most of the districts. That idea was brought back by fellow school committee members to a school committee meeting. And I think what we failed to make clear is that this year is still a formative, which is sort of an interim review year, and the summative would be next year. So in addition to doing that review, which will still be a performance review and an evidence-based performance review, that we will also have the opportunity to discuss and ask Dr. Rizzi to adopt new goals so there is something going forward to focus on, as well as carrying over the current goals, which I'm happy to talk about what those goals are too.
Great, thank you. And the next question will go to Molly first. How involved should the school committee be in the investigations into controversies within the Stoughton schools if the need arises? And should the school committee be responsible for hiring an outside investigator, or should that be done by the superintendent?
I think any hiring of an outside investigator, ultimately has the approval and knowledge of the school committee. The school committee certainly cannot take it upon itself to become involved in investigations. And I also want to back up and explain. So if there's a student disciplinary matter, It simply never comes to the school committee. If there's some kind of teacher investigation, that only comes to the school committee. If there's a disciplinary action in a grievance, then the grievance comes to the school committee. So you have to understand our role is really at this level where we don't become engaged in that. If something serious is happening, whether it's a legal claim, I think the school committee needs to monitor what has happened and what is happening as to that legal claim. And that's something I would have taken and will continue to take a very active role in following that and making sure that we find out what happened.
Thank you. Barbara?
I agree that it should be the superintendent's responsibility with the school committee managing and following up with her and making sure things are happening the way it should be happening. The discipline of a student absolutely should not be coming to the school committee itself, but as far as any legal area, they should be clearly aware of what's going on, and again, managing that superintendent to make sure that they are clearly aware of what's going on, and communicating also out to the public that they are aware and they are doing what their responsibilities are and what they're doing.
Okay. And this is a question that was submitted from the audience, and we'll go to you first, Barbara. What can be done to reduce lead levels in the school water supply?
Well, the knowledge I have is basically from the paper and from the Stoughton News on Facebook. So what I'm hearing is that there is, the way the water supply is tested, they have to, one, look at what the water, how they're testing the water, because if it's sitting for so long, the lead collects and it's going to be you're going to get a large number. So I think that that's one reason we have to look at, is really looking at how we're testing, and then also looking at, why are the reasons that our lead results are coming up so high now versus in the past.
Thank you. And Molly?
I don't specifically remember what your question is, but the issue of lead testing, it is an issue of concern. When the report and the results came out earlier this year, Mr. Harding, I shouldn't say testified, but discussed the issue, and we certainly asked as many questions and got as much information as we could out of him. It is of concern because we're getting inconsistent results from one year to the next. He was going to seek further input from UMass Amherst, I believe, and from the state to help him answer those questions. There have been additional flushing systems that have been purchased. That may have to be an ongoing matter, but it is a matter of we need continuing monitoring about that issue.
Thank you. Okay, and I have some more questions submitted from the audience, and we'll start with Molly first. What will you do about the increasing questions and problems pertaining to school systems, and what is your thought about how the education system in Stoughton causes high levels of stress, bullying, increases anxiety and depression? And third was, how was your day?
I didn't really get the first question. I have the second question.
The first is, what will you do about the increasing questions and problems pertaining to the school systems? And the second is, what are your thoughts about how the education system in Stoughton causes high levels of stress, bullying, increases anxiety and depression?
All right, thank you for that question. I know with respect to issues of emotional issues that children may have, that a year or so ago, and it is an ongoing program, one of Dr. Rizzi's goals was to install this professional development around social and emotional learning to deal with children who may be affected by trauma, who may be affected by anxiety or depression, and quite frankly, I know that the issue of anxiety is something I hear a lot about students at the high school level. I know it across different schools districts. And I do think there's a tension between the high expectations that we have, the lack of sleep that the high school students get, and the college prep work that they're doing. So I think it's something that we need to be aware of and need to be in balance on that. And we do have adjustment counselors at the high school, and we are actually seeking to add another counselor to the guidance counselors this year.
Thank you. And Barbara?
Can I have the first question again, the first part of the
Sure.
question?
The first question is, what will you do about the increasing questions and problems pertaining to the school systems in Stoughton?
What would I do about the increasing problems and questions? One, I think, again, is that open communication. You can't always disclose everything you want, that's going on, but you do want to make people aware of the fact that you are aware of what's going on and be able to talk and speak to what you can speak to. So I think that's, again, making sure they're very clear there's an open communication, and being very clear when you can't speak to something, why you can't speak to it, give the reasons why. As far as the stress level and bullying, I think that's something that that's something that comes from home and come from the school combined. That's something that the school and the parents have to work together to help the children with that piece. And they are, like I said, fortunately hiring a new school counselor that will take over the one part of it, so the other counselors can spend more time with the students, and the new counselor can do the work of the applications and college applications, which I think will help if our counselors can spend more time with our students that maybe need that help.
Great, thank you. This is also an audience-submitted question. We'll go to Barbara first. What role can the school committee play in addressing needs of students with disabilities?
Well, the school committee is bound by a lot of, by basically what the state law, by the state education laws and things like that. So I think that's where making sure that whatever the state of Massachusetts education has, provided for the school committee, making sure those things are happening and making sure we're consistent with those things.
And Molly?
Thank you. Well, obviously, it's a very significant part and a very critical part of the educational system and of the school district. Our school district has a very sophisticated set of different programs it provides for different students with special needs. In addition, there are some students who are sent out of district. I think the critical role is to make sure that the superintendent is very well versed in the law and in the needs of those students, and that the superintendent keeps up with current thought and professional education regarding the needs of those students, which might change from year to year, that the budget is fully funding the services that those students need.
Thank you. And we have one more final question submitted from the audience, and we'll start with Molly. How do you envision the process of hiring a new school superintendent, and what qualities would you be looking for?
Well, as for the process, I would certainly draw on my experience in serving at for the town manager search committee back in 2011 and 2012, where we used an outside consulting firm those people turned out to be enormously helpful to us in guiding us through the process, sort of telling us what our town needed. And I would definitely like to retain a professional, a search firm, which could be, quite frankly, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. They provide that service for a fee. So I'd want to involve an outside search firm. As far as the qualities, there's a wide range of qualities. Somebody needs to be excellent at numbers, at managing a budget, at monitoring a budget, at working with the business manager, at sort of squeezing everything out of every penny on behalf of the taxpayers. We need somebody who's a good communicator, both with the staff and with teachers, and also a good communicator with the public on various issues, because the public obviously reacts to all sorts of things that are going on, and it's important to have those communication skills. You need somebody who keeps up to date on educational theory and developments and the law. There's a lot of legal requirements and regulations that have to be followed. There's a vast scope of duties, and you really have to have a very special person and an extremely hardworking person who's going to meet all of those obligations successfully.
Thank you. And Barbara?
I agree that we do need to have an outside firm and a professional outside firm, making sure we're clear with them what qualities we're looking for, and really pushing back at what type of candidates. I've done this in the past with outside recruiting firms, but making sure they're very clear what type of candidates we are looking for, and making sure they're providing those candidates. A school superintendent for this, I think for Stoughton, needs to be someone, as Molly said, that is a great communicator, someone that really can communicate. They also need to be a leader. They need yes, we have a student union, but they have to figure out a way to make sure that they have that leadership to, whatever programs they decide to have, that they can get it implemented, because they're not the ones doing all the work, it's the teachers doing the work. So that superintendent needs to be a good leader, and whoever we do hire needs to show us they've had experience. They can show us what they've done in the past, and they have clear roadmap of what they've done in the past. It's not their theory, but they actually have done the work and show us what work they've done.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, and now we will go to the closing statement, and we'll start with Barbara.
My closing statement is pretty short. I really just like to say I'm Barbara Marshall, and I'm asking you to vote for me. How I look at it, I'm a very customer service person. You as the taxpayer are my customer. So how I look at it is when you vote for me, you are voting for yourself. So thank you, and I hope that you vote for me.
And Molly?
Thank you. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce and SMAC, of course, for presenting this opportunity to speak to the community. And I want to thank the town meeting members and the taxpayers for supporting Stoughton schools. My agenda as a candidate for school committee is simply this: to always serve the students and to promote their best interests. while at the same time remembering that we're all part of an educational community. The teachers, the union, the administrators, the school committee members, and the public. We all need to promote mutual respect and to pull together, bearing in mind our priority is the future of our children. I know what is at stake because my children who graduated Stoughton High School in 2017 were in the system from K through 12. They received an excellent education because so many opportunities were presented to them. I want to support all those opportunities, the outstanding academics, the robust athletics, music, and fine arts program, and just want to note that the Stoughton Music Program is the envy of our surrounding communities, and I will always support that program. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, I would like to thank both of you for attending this evening. And I would like to remind viewers that Election Day is Tuesday, April 10th, and the polls will be open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. And of course, we will be broadcasting live that evening as well, the live election results. And be sure to visit StoughtonTV.com for all election coverage. And right now, we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back with the candidates for Selectmen. Thank you so much for tuning in.
We're gonna take 5 minutes if you'd like to grab some refreshments.
And welcome back. We are about to start the Selectmen candidates portion of the Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum. And there are 4 candidates running for 2 seats on the Board of Selectmen. And those candidates are incumbent Bob O'Regan, incumbent Steve Cavey, and the challengers are Peter Brown and Peter Buckley. And let me just go over the rules again. Each candidate will have a 1-minute opening statement, and they will also have a 1-minute closing statement. Each question, they will have 90 seconds to answer, and there will be no rebuttals, and Christine Iacobucci is our timekeeper. So let's get started with our first candidate here. Introduce yourself, Peter Brown.
All right, good evening. I'd like to acknowledge the Chamber and SMAC for hosting this, and thank you for the opportunity. Before I begin and talk about myself, I want to note that my absence last week was unavoidable. It was due to a personal issue. I did notify the Women's League, and I guess it was an oversight that they didn't publicly announce it, but that's the reason for my absence last week. Most people know who I am. I'm Peter Brown. I stand for, most people know what I stand for and how I address issues. Some agree and some don't agree. I'm a fiscal conservative who knows that the taxpayer deserves prudence and responsibility and accountability. If I'm elected, I will continue to serve as I had prior to December, and I look forward to being able to answer some questions tonight. Thank you.
And Peter Buckley.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Again, I'd like to thank the Chamber, SMAC, and everybody involved in making tonight's forum happen. My name is Peter Buckley, and I am running for one of the 2 seats for Selectmen in this April's election. Not only am I a lifelong resident of Stoughton, but I am also 5th generation. It's a community that my family chose to raise their family in, and I'm also raising my 2 children in. In my professional life, I work for a larger municipality that happens to have in-house town council. In that capacity, I work as a paralegal, I work as the risk manager, and I also work as their claims manager. It's experience that needs to be brought before the board today for the issues that are coming before the town. This is something that I can bring to the board right from the get-go. Just like in my campaign, I've been an independent voice running independently, not with another candidate or any other group. And this is the same promise I will bring to the board once I'm elected. It's an independent voice for the people of this town. I ask for one of your votes, April 10th. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And Stephen Cavey.
Thank you very much. My name is Stephen Cavey. I'm a current selectman, and I'm running for re-election. I was elected as part of the recall election that took place last December. It was a rainy and cold Tuesday, as you probably remember, but the residents of Stoughton came out in record numbers to vote for a more professional, thoughtful, and respectful board. I was elected to the board because you saw in me a person who would faithfully represent your values, and it's also someone you could trust. You also saw that I had experience in accounting, tax, finance, and management. Over the last 4 months, the current board has made tremendous progress. moving this town forward. We've submitted a budget with a surplus, which is a rare feat. We've hired an interim town manager whose numerous successes spring from his thoroughness, high ethical standards, and goodwill that he's nurtured among town employees over the course of his entire career. We found additional sources of revenue for the town that have potential to reduce the tax burden on individual taxpayers. We started the process of hiring a town manager, and we're going to keep that professional, which is befitting an organization with a $102 million operating budget.
And that's time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bob Orican.
Thank you, and I also want to thank the Chamber and SMAC, all the folks here and at home watching, and the other candidates. It's been my privilege to serve for 2 terms on the Board of Selectmen, and I'm asking for votes to return to the board to continue serving. My wife and I moved to Stoughton almost 35 years ago. We chose to live in Stoughton. We raised our 2 children in Stoughton. It's a tremendous community to live in. It's a happy place to be. We can make it happier, we can make it better. That's what I've been working on. And if we take a minute and go back through the last 6 or 7 years, I pushed for a town planner. I pushed for the master plan. It was my privilege to make the presentation to the Massachusetts School Building Authority that then unanimously approved our application for a new high school. I've been there working to move the town forward. You'll hear many times, maybe this evening, I want to move the town forward. I've been pushing and pulling to have this town move forward, and I ask for your vote to continue doing that.
Thank you, Bob. And let's get right into the questions. We'll go in order this time from Peter, and then we'll go in succession, and you'll each have an opportunity to answer a question first. The first question to Peter Brown is, how do you think the current Board of Selectmen is doing?
How do I think the current Board of Selectmen is doing?
Yes.
I think that the current Board of Selectmen is extremely dedicated, enthusiastic, and approaches their duties, responsibly. However, I see no balance. I see no reflection of the entire town makeup. I'd like to see a lot more discussion. From what I've seen over the last several weeks, it's more what the chairman says has basically been just a nod from the entire board, which to me is disappointing because if nothing else, you have to have transparency. You have to have, it's okay to agree to disagree on occasion. And I'm not seeing that. And I'm not saying that it should be an argument on every meeting, but there should be some healthy discussion. One of the things that frustrates me is that most of the business that they seem to be doing is in the executive session behind closed doors. And in a democracy, we expect, and not only expect, we demand transparency and openness. And a lot of the items that are going to affect us directly in terms of capital projects and spending is on an executive session agenda. You don't have to take my word for it. You can just look at that. And I would like to know what is so secretive about talking about the purchase of a train station or property on West Street or Randolph Savings Bank or any of that other stuff. I understand there are sometimes sensitive issues, but not in this case. The taxpayer has the right, the resident has the right to know what we're spending, and if we're going to be asked to spend, they need to bring that to the entire public. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. And same question, Peter Buckley.
I see the current board working with an extreme lack of experience. There's no diverse knowledge that's coming forward from them. Again, the discussions, it's always a 5-0 vote. Some people may see that as something good. I don't. I see that as something that is, it's either preconceived or, like I said, the discussion needs to take place in some of these bigger issues that may come before the board that I haven't seen yet. So where are those discussions taking place? Are they taking place? That's how I see the current board working right now.
Thank you. And Stephen?
Thank you very much. I think the board's doing great. I think we have a lot of complementary talents that allow us to get a lot of work done very quickly, and a very strong will to work and to do right for the town and do right by the town. I do disagree, though, that we always agree. I mean, there are a lot of 5-0 votes, but those are generally non-controversial votes. There's been very healthy debate, and there have been numerous times when we have not been able to reach a consensus, but we've still been able to pull off a vote. And there have been some votes that failed. Overall, I think there's no fear to disagree, and I think we all have a really good opportunity to express our views, and we have a really good working relationship. So I think we've been very successful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Bob?
I think the board is working well. I think it's and we're working very hard to do the public's business. There is a drastic, sharp contrast between the way the board is working today and the way it was working in November. And that is because you have a group of dedicated, curious, prepared, thoughtful, analytical people doing our jobs to lead the town as well as we can, getting information, not afraid to question each other or push each other. There are many votes that don't get taken because somebody makes a motion and it fails for lack of a second. Let's pay attention to what happens today. There's a discussion, issues are vetted, they lead to decisions. In the previous board, frankly, there'd be a vote, then there'd be a discussion. All right? Backwards. I'd like to know what people mean by bringing balance to the board. We have a curious analytical team, thorough and prepared, interested and intrigued, working hard, approving minutes in less than 6 months' time, having them sit around. How do you want to balance that? What is the balance you want for that? Do you want unprepared, unanalytical, unthoughtful people who just show up and take votes without thinking about what they're doing? I think that is not what you want. I think this board is working very hard to move this town ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, we'll go on to the next question, and we're starting this with Peter Buckley. What should the relationship be among the Board of Selectmen, the town manager, and the department heads in the day-to-day operations of the town?
The day-to-day operations of the town are handled by the town manager. Two direct hires from the Board of Selectmen is the town manager and the police chief. That's where it should remain. There is no reason why the Board of Selectmen should be involved into the department heads for anything on the day-to-day operations. That's what you hire a town manager for. You hire an experienced town manager to do just that, manage the town day to day.
Thank you. Same question, Stephen Cavey.
Sure. Yeah, success in business or municipal operations depends on empowering people to do the work that they are tasked with doing. And so in that respect, I believe that it's important that the Board of Selectmen create a policy and we set an environment that allows the town manager to succeed, work with the department heads, and everything to flow down through the policy, through the town manager to the department heads, with no micromanaging. Allow people an opportunity to work hard, and they'll do amazing. Thank you.
Bob O'Regan.
The function of the Board of Selectmen under our charter is to be a policy board. So the role that the board should have is to supervise the town manager in implementing the policy that the board adopts, to adopt policy carefully and thoughtfully, get information from the manager, from the department heads, hold the manager and the department heads accountable, pay careful scrutiny to the way town taxpayers' money is spent. But day-to-day operations, showing up in department heads' offices, asking them to do one thing or another for one particular project or another, no. Going into the town manager's office and saying, if you do this, you will keep your job, no. And that is the way, that is working and functioning as a board, deciding things as a board, considering things and getting information as a board is how this board is functioning. And it's a pleasure to work with this board of thoughtful, intelligent, hardworking people.
Thank you. Peter Brown.
You asked the relationship between the Board of Selectmen and the town manager. Clearly, it should be respectful and cordial. Everybody who's already served or is serving understands that the Board of Selectmen don't run the day-to-day operations, although I'm not certain that's how it's going on as we speak. Town manager is hired, paid extremely good money to make good decisions, daily decisions. The Board of Selectmen should and only should provide oversight. And the way I mean oversight is by setting policy and then expecting the town manager to implement it. It shouldn't be Board of Selectmen have specific relationships with different department heads and they're looking for something done, or they may have that relationship with the current town manager or whoever was in the past. One of the issues that I had with our former town manager was that he did not keep the entire Board of Selectmen informed. There were a few selectmen, or one or two, that would be kept informed, and it appeared that the relationship was even deeper than just the mutual respect. So I believe the town manager should be doing the daily operation, just like everyone will stay up here, but I'm not certain that's the way things are going as we speak, but that's what I would support if I was elected. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will go first to Stephen Cavey.
Thank you.
Currently, the potential purchases of properties is being discussed almost exclusively in executive sessions. Should parts of these discussions be done in open session in order to allow residents to be informed on the process and to offer input?
This is going to be a very short answer. I apologize for that, but the elements that we discussed in executive session should remain in executive session. They mostly because we are in some cases discussing things that if it became general knowledge could harm our efforts. And so just given the guidelines of what's allowable for executive sessions, we're only discussing things that for which that exemption applies. Thank you.
Bob?
What is discussed in executive session on these properties is negotiating strategy on the purchase of the properties, which is one of the few exceptions under the open meeting law for non-public discussion. And I believe the public will understand that negotiating well to acquire property on terms that are favorable to the taxpayer is something that the taxpayers would want the town to do. That's what happens in the executive sessions. The business of acquiring these properties is part of the town meeting process. If folks, for example, watched the deliberations for the capital project items that the board conducted both initially and then when we settled on the figure, the public would see there was pretty robust discussion about the merits of various properties, about how they would fit into an overall view towards the town, about generally what would be the tolerance for paying or not paying, but and potential uses of these properties. But the only part that's not in the public is actual negotiating strategy for the acquisition, and it stays in the executive area where it belongs, and I think where all of the other candidates have indicated they agree that's where it belongs until you have a deal.
Thank you. Peter Brown?
Well, I don't agree with the amount of discussion or the actual subject matter that's being discussed in executive session. As I had said earlier, democracy is about open and transparent government, and there's nothing secret about discussing or purchasing property, whether it be the fire station or property on West Street or Cedar Hill. Tax dollars we're spending is coming out of our pocket. The residents should have a right to know. In fact, no one can come up and make any comments about the executive session because first off, the current board can hide behind the fact that it's in executive session. They're not at liberty to discuss things that happen in executive session. However, when we're looking at being asked, and the way I see this agenda and some of the projects or the capital projects on there, you're talking millions and millions of dollars, not to mention the stuff that we have to address that we already own. So I don't see why it would be secretive, and I don't think it should be. And if I get back on the board, this stuff would be brought out into the open. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Buckley?
Thank you. It really shouldn't be. There's no reason for negotiations for purchases of real estate to be in executive session. There's nothing really damaging that's going to be discussed. It was mentioned that it's in the best interest for the residents of the town. The best thing for the residents of the town is to know what you're discussing. What is your strategy? Let them know what your strategy is. They may even have a little bit something to add to it. Or they might be against it, but they're not being afforded the chance to speak on it. It's right. It should not be an executive session. It should be out in the public meeting. And that's where it just should not be in there. It's just, like, again, it's not transparent. You're not allowing the residents and the taxpayers of this town to weigh in on anything. It's just not right.
Thank you. And the next question, which will go to Bob O'Regan, is this question was submitted from the audience, and it is, the recall election less than 4 months ago was a very big event in Stoughton. Each of you were involved, And could you state what role you played in the recall and explain why you took the position you did for or against the recall? And that starts with Bob O'Regan.
I did support the recall, and I supported it. One way to tell would be to go back and watch the Selectmen's meetings for the previous period of time. One need only to look and see how members of the board were treating the public, treating employees, going about the public's business, whether or not they were and were not informed of the material that was, of the material that would lead to the decisions. And then the things that the public didn't see and couldn't see in the way that employees were being treated, where threats were being made against employees, which I heard about, where things that are not responsible in a democracy were being conducted in the community in the name of the taxpayers of this town. And so I supported the recall for those reasons. And I believe, as you see how this board is functioning since the 3 candidates were elected, you see a difference in the way the town is being operated.
Thank you. Peter Brown?
Well, my position was I was opposed to the recall. I mean, that was an effort to wipe out the majority of the Board of Selectmen. You had 2 active members of the Board of Selectmen at every meeting, for the most part, supporting the recall. I believe the recall was based around a power grab. There were lots of allegations thrown out at myself and the other 2 members that none are actually even true. In fact, a Superior Court judge ruled that the injunction that the former town manager went for was denied. The contract was up June 30th. The action we took was appropriate and legal. It was a necessary action. In fact, I think it was the best decision I made as part of the Board of Selectmen. But as far as what the reason behind it, I can't answer why that, a certain group or well-organized citizens get to speak. We had no chance to oppose the charges because there's nothing in the charter that gives anyone being recalled the ability to question the petitioner or the people lodging the complaint against you. But one thing I do know is that we didn't make any action, or we didn't take any action that wasn't supported in a court of law. There was no district attorney or anybody knocking on our door filing charges against us for any action that we took that was inappropriate or not legal. So I believe that it was a power grab based on control, and it appears that my suspicion was correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Buckley?
Thank you. The recall's over. Right now, we've just heard 2 answers that have taken time to answer, that we could be discussing the real issues today for this town. And that's my position on that. The recall is over. Move on.
Thank you. Stephen Cavey?
Thank you. I was a candidate to replace one of the selectmen, Cohn. I ran because I was, well, there's a couple of reasons. One, I was just generally disgusted by the behavior of the board, and that was just unapologetic and overt. Any of the meetings you watched became an absolute circus in no time at all. Generally, I'm opposed to the idea of recalls. I think that people are a little too quick to want to fire somebody for making a mistake. But there was an expectation that they show some just acknowledgement that they if someone makes a mistake, sorry, I made a mistake, I'll do better. Nothing that even remotely resembled that. And I just could not stomach the idea of raising my son in a town with that kind of leadership. I stepped forward because I had some talents I thought that I could bring to bear to the problems of the town. I'm a mutual fund tax accountant. I have education in finance and controls, and I saw, specifically the Cohen. Even before the recall became a thing, I was interested in running against Cohen in this election because of his behavior earlier on, where he had lost composure. He was actually sitting in this seat, and during a public meeting, lost his temper and swore. And used foul language. I just was really disgusted by this became acceptable and it needed to change. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will go to Peter Brown first. Downtown Stoughton is and has been a constant topic of discussion. Why has there been no tangible progress in the downtown over the last 10 years?
Well, part of the reason there's been no movement in downtown is the bylaws. We actually had citizens oppose the actual project, the Malcolm and Parson. In fact, it reminds me of a night going back to the fall that we started talking about the Malcolm and Parson building and why nothing was getting done. And the holdup was allegedly based on parking spaces and that they needed 4 due to the current SMU bylaws, which is a complicated matter, and I'm not going to try to explain. I have a hard time understanding it myself. But downtown, you cannot develop downtown with taxpayer money. And half the projects that are being suggested is with taxpayer money. I led the charge on trying to find a solution to find 4 parking spots for the Malcolm and Parson building, and there were many options. And as a board, we did work collectively to try to come up with a solution, and we did arrive at a solution. Now, I don't know where that building stands at this point, and whether they're ready to go with that project or not, but there have to be some changes, and it's going to require bylaw changes, which I believe are in place this year for the Springtown meeting. But I believe that you have to build and develop downtown through private-public endeavors. And I wouldn't just ignore just downtown. I know that's the question, but there are other areas, for example, North Stoughton, the Reebok building, and the Garner Brothers building. There's revenue out there to be had if we get to it and address the issues through private endeavors as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Buckley?
Thank you. Development of the downtown, like you have mentioned, it's been a problem for a long time. It's not with just the current board or the boards past. It's been for many, many years. When the SMUD was put in place, it was put in place without the proper infrastructure that should come before it. Will it work now if the infrastructure is built back up again? It remains to be seen. But right now what we have is we have more and more businesses leaving the downtown area and nothing coming back in. And the businesses that do come back in are not really sustaining to the economic level that we should have in the downtown area. So instead of, it was mentioned before in another forum that maybe the SMUD should be just tossed out and rewritten, a whole new zoning bylaw. Well, there's a lot that's involved into that. Do we need to take the time to rebuild it, or do we take a look at the existing bylaw and say, how can we amend it? How can we make this a little bit better? Not only to amend it to make it better, but put some enforcement behind it as well. For people like the hole, as they call it, in the center of town. It was the owner that left it that way as well. But where was the strength of the board that came in and says, you need to get this back off the ground now? It's been 8 years. It's way too long. And the same thing with other businesses with vacant storefronts down there. How long are you going to allow them to be vacant before they fill them with something? But it's got to be smart in how they fill those downtown areas. So there's another plan. If it's part of the master plan, fine, but I don't think we need to recreate the wheel. Let's look at what we have right now. It's every time that a board has come up in the past, they want to rewrite all the bylaws. We don't have the time. We don't have the resources. We don't have the energy at this point to do it. We need to go and move the town forward.
Stephen?
Thank you. I agree that the problem is mostly zoning. Oddly enough, the zoning laws that are in place in our downtown were codified shortly before the market crash in 2008, and were really designed for an environment that was very different than the one that we've lived in for the last 10 years. In the last 5 years, for example, I think there's only been 4 or 5 applications for development in the downtown, and that to me signals that those zoning laws are not really, they're not successful. They're not doing what people thought they were going to do. They need to be changed, and up until now, there's been a vacuum of leadership in coordinating that effort. And our current board is actually doing a lot of work in that area. We are working with better with the boards. In the past, people have been, sort of like it's like Three Stooges trying to get through a door. Like you have all these committees and boards trying to coordinate, and it really just hasn't worked out. But we've been able to work very successfully with a lot of the other committees and boards that are a part of this development. And in town meeting, we're going to have, there's going to be two possible solutions presented to town meeting, which is something we haven't seen in a very long time. So we're making great progress on it, and I think that the problem we've had in the past was honestly a vacuum of leadership and outdated zoning bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob?
Sometimes I think the biggest problem with the downtown is that people would build under something called a schmood, which is a very ugly word. And so maybe the real problem is we have to change the word. It stands for Stoughton Center Mixed Use Overlay District. It was adopted before the big crash. It was adopted at a different time with different uses. Folks who are interested should go on the town website, on the GIS mapping site, and take a look at how the town is zoned. We need to address how the zoning is. We, on our own, managed to disperse the commercial activity of the town through all kinds of other commercial activity up and down Washington Street, shopping centers all over town. That helped destroy the downtown. We need to find the mix of government work, because it was government policy that led to the collapse of the downtown, to trigger the investment in the downtown that we need. It's investment. It's people seeing, an investor seeing a return in the investment that will bring about the resurgence of the downtown. That means traffic needs to be rerouted. It means the government needs to make it be a place where people want to live and do business, and then we'll see the investment come in. And once that happens, then we'll see businesses and residents come back and bring the commercial life and the residential life back. That's what we are working on now on the Board of Selectmen, if you follow the meetings.
Thank you. And the next question will go to Peter Buckley. This is an audience-submitted question, and it is, what is the process of selecting a new town manager? How would you like the process to take place, and what do you think needs to be improved?
We've seen many processes in the past. It's a good question. I mean, sometimes it's a difficult question to ask. It depends on what are we looking for? Are we looking for someone that's already here? Are we looking for someone that needs to come in from the outside? So that's going to determine the process on how you look for a town manager. Either way, it should be vetted out in the open. Everything should be out there. Resumes should be submitted. Everything should be right there. And people in this, again, the residents should have a chance to weigh in on this. If you're going out from outside of the town, maybe right now, there were, back in August, there were 20 positions open in the Commonwealth for town manager. How are you going to get, out of that 20, how are you going to get the right person to come here? Who's going to come to Stoughton? So there's the process you got to come up with. It's got to be thought out thoroughly. So to actually label a process right now, you can't. Depends on what you're looking for and where you're going to go looking for it.
Thank you. Stephen?
Thank you. Our town has an operating budget of $102,427,344, which is an outstanding amount of money. And any organization of that size, with that size of a budget, will look for a manager, for its top manager, using professional means and professional guidance. I advocate for that. There are places where there are organizations and that will help municipalities seek out candidates who are qualified for these jobs. They'll have the methodologies. They'll be able to guide us through that process. And to pretend like we know better is really just a recipe for disaster. We need professional help here, and we're going to get it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob?
So in addition to a $103 million operating budget, the town manager oversees expenditure of enterprise accounts, so it brings the total of money in and out that the town manager is responsible for closer to $120 million. In addition, the manager is the line person in charge of construction projects in the town. So we right now have about $140 million of construction projects in the town between the high school and other projects. Significant projects calling for significant skill set. We did have a meeting 2 weeks ago when we discussed issuing an RFP. We did invite public to comment on the process for recruiting that. We will have another meeting, I believe, March 27th, as the RFP process is going out, inviting further public comment on the process. I anticipate there will be discussion on whether, when, and how a citizens committee to help screen applicants will be formed. Once we get a consultant in place, what I would be in favor of is the consultant working with the board and with the concerned citizens to develop a structure for selecting the manager that builds confidence in the community for whoever is selected. And that will require and involve citizen participation.
And Peter Brown?
Well, I'm not certain I heard everything the chairman was talking about as far as where they're at with the process, but I'm surprised that it's still in the making. One of the things that was discussed at length and at nauseum in some cases that we had to replace and get a town manager in place, which I believe we had the right one in the interim when they didn't elect to renew his contract in December. But besides the obvious of municipal and professional experience, I think you asked about the selection process. You obviously have to put together a search group, whether that be a committee or a consultant, which costs money, and you're going to need that. I would think that that any town manager that would be looking to come to Stoughton, they need to know what the political makeup here in terms of what our mission and goals are. You don't want to bring somebody in that has no idea of the makeup of the town of Stoughton, because first off, we're expecting, and as people have said, there's many projects on the table as we speak, and many that are going to be explored, or he's going to have to jump in, or she's going to have to jump into right away. But the thing I would expect and demand is residential preference, meaning that the person, whoever it may be, has to comply with the charter and move to the town of Stoughton. The town manager in the town of Stoughton makes a good salary. We're going to continue, I'm sure, pay a good salary. They should have some sort of skin in the game. Somebody outside the community, whether it's the next town over or 5 states away, should have the same skin in the game as the residents. Not that it would preclude people, because the charter clearly spells out you have 1 year to take residence in the town of Stoughton. Thank you.
Thank you, that's time. And we have one final question, and this was submitted by a resident in regards to new roads in Stoughton and new signage in the square. They feel that new, faster roads without new signage is troublesome. And what is your opinion on that? And we'll start with Stephen Cavey.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of a difficulty understanding the question.
Okay, the question...
I know it's about roads and signs, but...
Yeah, the opinion of this resident is that new roads in Stoughton without proper signage would be troublesome. So they feel that if we have new roads, we need new updated signage. And what is your opinion on that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's technology has changed significantly. So, a lot of times, like, for example, when I'm driving around, I tend to rely on GPS, and I follow that. But, there's really nothing more frustrating than sort of looking for a place and you can't find either a house number or an address, street sign. But even more than that, there's a safety concern that if the signs you're referring to are safety signs, speed limits, stop signs, things like that. Yeah, absolutely. I'm absolutely in favor of that.
Thank you. Bob?
I think roads should be well signed, directions should be well signed. I'd invite whoever, and ask whoever submitted the question to get in touch with the DPW or the town manager or the Board of Selectmen. If there are particular roads or particular directions that are deficient, let us know so we can fix it. But good signage is a good thing. I do know that there's been a change in the font of some of the new road signs that are going up, and we'll be looking into that to see, because the old font seems to work better than the new font, especially as the old eyes, because the old eyes don't work as well as the new eyes. And somehow the street signs seem to be getting smaller and more blurry. But I agree. And if we can do a better job, it will help folks who have that problem to let town government know specifically where the problem is and what they'd like to see as a fix.
Thank you. Peter Brown?
Well, I believe that I don't want to rely on Google Map, so I think the town should certainly provide proper street signage. I believe that we do have good street signage, but in addition to the street signage, it's important that people know, especially coming into town, know where they're going. And my wife lived here her entire life. She's still asking me street names. I've been here 25 years. In addition to the street signage, I'd like to see the continuation of the improved public safety by the lighting that's going on, the new lights that are appearing on the streets. So I think that in addition to making certain that the streets are properly signed and stated, I'd also like to see the lighting continue to be improved as the way it's going. So that's
Excellent. Peter Buckley?
Thank you. Depends, is it a new road or an old road? Either way, the signage needs to be clearly and clear to everybody, not only to the daytime driving, but nighttime driving, as you alluded to, Bob, on that one. I put my glasses down on that one. But it has to be clear, they have to be clearly marked. Do they need to be bigger? It all remains. So we have some really old signs in the roads. We have some brand-new ones on the newer roads. As far as the newer roads going in, it could be a stipulation of anybody who's putting in a new development in the town. That's their responsibility. If it's a private, especially if it's a private way, it is the responsibility of the developer to put that down on that one. But they could also make it a condition onto the public ways. The same thing, I mean, it's a matter of what are our resources to update these signs. But I do agree that it is a safety issue, and they do need to be clearly marked and to be seen day and night.
Thank you. All right, and we will go to our closing statements now. You will each have 1 minute, and let's go right in order with Peter Brown.
Well, okay, I'd like to thank everybody, first off, for listening to me and indulging and hearing my views on what I have to say. On April 10th is another election. This will be my 4th election in less than 3 years. I'm asking for your support because I'm looking to get back on the Board of Selectmen. It's a calling. I don't have to do this. I don't need this position in terms of any status or for the symbol or for the title. I certainly don't want to put my family through anything more than what we had in the fall. However, this is something that I'm committed to and I have to do. I'm a fiscal conservative, looking to make certain that we spend the tax dollars, you get the most and the best return on our tax dollars that we all share in. And I'm asking for your support on April 10th. If you vote for me, you'll return some fiscal responsibility back to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Buckley?
Thank you. Again, I'd like to thank the Chamber, SMAC, and everybody who made this event possible tonight. From what we definitely heard tonight, there does seem, and there is, an apparent, it is apparent, excuse me, that the experience is needed of the Board of Selectmen. So I posed the question to the community. Do you feel more comfortable with a board with such a lack of diverse knowledge in municipal government handling your future as a resident and a taxpayer? Or do you want people you know who will represent you and your investment and the knowledge to do so? And my other question is, too, what happened to the chairs that were up here? I didn't know. Anyways, I ask for one of your 2 votes on April 10th. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Cavey?
Thank you to the Chamber, and Michael, thank you very much for moderating this. I'd also like to thank the other candidates for their constant dedication to the town. I chose to live in Stoughton, and I raised my family here because I think this is a really special place. First of all, it is an affordable place to live generally. The population is very diverse, and I really love that. I also think we have a lot of shared values. I've noticed that the people here really stick together, and we really look out for one another, and I think that's extremely special. I've had an amazing time using my education in finance and management and my professional experience in tax and accounting to help move our town forward for the past 4 months as a member of the Board of Selectmen. I respectfully ask for your vote so that I may continue what I've started. We've already accomplished so much in 4 months. Imagine what I can do in 3 years. I hope you'll see the same. I hope you'll have the same faith in me that you showed me in December. I'll continue to listen to your concerns, advocate on your behalf, and bring my experience to bear on the problems of our town. Thank you very much.
And Bob O'Regan?
Thank you. I also wish to thank the Chamber, SMAC, the other candidates, and the audience for participating, or allowing me to participate tonight. The The challenges that we face in the community can be boiled down to something each of us realizes every 3 months when we write out a check: money. Taxes and taxes and taxes is something that we on the Board of Selectmen hear all the time. We have to provide, and we want to provide, high-quality services without having to charge taxes. Now, that's not possible. Expenses are growing faster than our revenues. That means economic development. Of the candidates you see before you, there's one candidate who has been pushing and pushing and pushing to develop the tax base in this town: me. I've been doing it because we raised our family here. It's a great town. The qualities and characteristics of this town will continue if we can afford it, and that means building the tax base. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the Chamber of Commerce and myself, I would like to thank all of you for attending this evening. And I wanted to remind everyone, there are 4 candidates running for 2 seats on the Board of Selectmen. Those candidates are incumbent Bob O'Regan, incumbent Stephen Cavey, challengers Peter Brown and Peter Buckley. And we would like to remind you that the final debate of the campaign season will be Monday, April 2nd, and that will be featuring the school committee and the selectmen candidates. And be sure to visit www.stoughtontv.com for all of your election coverage. The election will be held on Tuesday, April 10th. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. And SMAC will be airing live election coverage that evening. My name is Michael Hammond. It has been a pleasure to be invited to host this evening, and I would like to turn the mic over to Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce, Terry Schneider, for some closing thank yous.
Thank you. I want to first thank and a hand for Mike Hammond, because he's done a wonderful job tonight. And Christine with the time cards, excellent job. Thank you. As a chamber executive, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank one of our members, Stop and Shop, for donating the food items and water. I thank all of you people in the audience for coming. Again, the committee for the candidates forum of the Chamber of Commerce was Jeffrey Pickett and Cindy Pizarro, who were co-chairs, and Aaron Lockhart, who also helped with some of the questions. I want to thank SMAC, which I was remiss of not thanking them originally. Couldn't read my notes well. And, I should thank myself. I'm honey too. I think that's everybody. So thank you all for coming. I hope it was well-informed, entertaining, and have a great evening. Thanks.